Hey everyone, my name is Wayne. I'm the founder and CEO of Huts, and today we're going to do a quick webinar just going over what the Huts interiors process is. How do we go from our standards and sort of making them personal on the interior fixture and finishes selections? Um, so let's dive right in. So, if anyone here has ever gone through a renovation or ever kind of selected materials, it can often feel like this. There's just too many options. Um, and so you can imagine going to a tile showroom and being surrounded by literally thousands of options and getting this sense of being overwhelmed. And that's what happens when you're making every single selection across every finish and every fixture in a home, except it happens across all 200 some odd things that need to be specified for a house. And so a lot of our interior selections process is about making a few really important decisions that then filter into all the many small decisions that go into these selections. And so there's really kind of like three principles that we think about when we designed our process for interior fixture and finishes selections. One is helping our clients overcome the paradox of choice, that there's when there's too many options, sometimes it can create an inability to make any choice at all. And so we're trying to refine down to a set of selections where you really can't go wrong. The second is to overcome what we call blank page syndrome, that by presenting our clients with an initial set of selections, it puts them in the editor's seat rather than starting from nothing at all. That it tends to be that our clients say, I like 80% of what you've chosen here, but can we talk about this fixture or this finish or this individual piece, rather than making all of those 200 some odd selections up front. And the last is overcoming this fear of making the wrong choice, that when you're working on your house, it's a major investment, it's a place you're going to spend a lot of time. It can often feel like that you're at risk of choosing the wrong thing. And so we've worked quite hard to make sure that any number of choices that you make within our selections, or even things outside of our kind of catalog of selections, that they'll play well within the overall aesthetic and overall vision of the property, and it'll be very difficult to make a poor choice. So here we are looking at an overall HUTS process, our design and development process end to end, all the way from land sourcing through to construction. And we don't need to dive into each one of these other than to say that in blue, we see these moments where we start to dive into interior finish and fixture selections. The first time we'll start to look at interiors is after we've gone through space planning. We've gone through standard selection on the property. We've worked with you on modifying the property and making it the home design sort of works both for the lot that you have and the lifestyle you hope to live within. You hope to have within it, along with your overall kind of perspective on budget. And so at some point through that modification process, we'll do our first, what we call our 3D walkthrough. We're going to actually go inside the house and take a tour through it. And it'll look something like this. Everything's sort of in white. We're getting a sense of the space. We're getting a sense of the scale. We're understanding how light comes in and views that might be there. But we have no finish selections in place yet. The mood of the place isn't there. The texture of the place isn't there. It's really sort of a white box. And so, how do we go from that white box to kind of a layered, textured, warm, real space? And so, the first thing we try to do is just get a sense from our clients of what their general mood for the space is. Is it somewhere in this gradient between light and airy and dark and rich? And we help our clients kind of position themselves. Is this a place that um, is sort of spacious and bright and really about kind of letting the light play, or equally interesting that it's a little bit kind of richer and darker, feels maybe a little bit more rustic in its application. And so our first move is to help our clients make one big decision. Where are you on this gradient? And that starts to filter into all the other selections we'll make next. And so from there, we think about this idea of a common foundation, that underlying all of our designs are sort of neutral components, neutral flooring, some simple lighting elements, simple decorative lighting elements. And on top of that, we can start to layer the aesthetic perspective that you have, whether it's more light and airy or more dark and rich. And so we start to bring that in through millwork and woods. We bring that in through tile. We bring that in through stones and backsplashes, hardware throughout. And we're able to flex a little bit from that neutral palette and the kind of common foundation and make the space feel a little bit more light and airy or a little bit more dark and rich and a little bit more appropriate to your aesthetic disposition and also the context where the property is going to live. And so whether it's sort of more in the light and airy version, or a little bit more in the dark and rich. We're able to use these kind of small elements to modify. And again, there's always opportunities room by room to change this or kind of go even further and make some more unique selections. But like I said, this gives our clients a way to be in the editor seat and say, I like 80% of what this is or 90% of what this is, but can we talk specifically about that tile? Or I have an idea for a specific fixture and get down to a more limited set of selections that we need to make so you don't get that sort of paradox of choice where it's totally overwhelming. The next thing that we'll do is go room by room and start to see how this palette plays out in actual objects and real finishes, and goes from a mood to a set of selections. And so, again, looking at common foundation elements that would be sort of standard throughout, we're looking at this a property that we're designing right now in Julian, California, and everything you see here highlighted in the sort of taupe tone is really being treated with the kind of common elements, the common foundation elements. And then everything past that within the kitchens and the bathrooms, this is really our location where we are putting more specificity and a little bit more character into the finish selections. And so for each of these, we're going from that the client selection of a space that's a little bit more dark and rich into what are the actual applications of that. And looking at that within, or sorry, a little bit more, it's a light and airy approach. What are the applications of that? And also within budget. So it's not, we're sort of moving past mood and getting into to pricing and saying, there are different ways to achieve a similar sort of tone and a similar aesthetic, but at different levels of finish and different pricing based on our manufacturer choices. And so here we're looking at sort of a middle range for our kitchen applications, our kitchen cabinetry and fronts, our stones, etc. And so then we actually choose real objects, real manufacturers, real suppliers, and zoom in and create full elevations on the places that we're talking about. And this is the starting point in the case of kitchens for things like shop drawings and for cabinet manufacturers to start to size and provide penny accurate pricing on each of the elements that we've selected. And so from step one, we've gone through mood. On step two, we've gotten into specific objects room by room and sort of a general pricing category. And then in step three, we come up with a comprehensive lookbook for all of the finishes that make up all of the rooms in the house and assign real manufacturers to each one. We're looking at both pricing, we're looking at availability, we're looking at places where huts may be able to pass through the deepest trade discounts, and putting together that full lookbook that makes up the specifications that will fold into the construction documents to make sure that our build teams are implementing all of these components. And so you can see that in here where we're showing some common interior foundation elements. We're showing specific cabinet specifications and cabinet suppliers, hardware, lighting, appliances, faucets and other fixtures, and decorative lighting throughout. And this is an abbreviated version of what our ultimate finished selections book would look like, where it's relatively deep. And we make sure that we get this to our clients so they understand all of the pieces that are going to go in their house before they're implemented. And in any time it's possible, we make sure that we're able to deliver real world samples so that our clients can touch and feel the selections that make up their mood, their budget, and the applications in their home. And so the way that we work through this on within our sort of Huts contract, we have we go through this sort of 3 or 4 step design process where we're funneling down from mood down towards a full specifications book and full procurement list, and we're getting paid. Huts is paid hourly for our services and sort of making those selections and helping to go through that sequence. And then we're also operating on the procurement side, that we're helping to manage the purchasing, the receiving, and then delivery to the site at the time when the those objects are actually needed for install in the project. And this is a major sort of pinch point in most projects, that where do you send these 200 plus objects? Where do they end up in a facility? Oftentimes general contractors don't have a place to keep them. Owners almost certainly don't have a facility to keep them. And so we're able to kind of bring everything into one facility and then manage the distribution to the job site. And so the way that we do that and the way that you can think about finished procurement is really there's sort of 3 ways to go about it. The first is that everything within the house can be contractor supplied: windows, doors, lumber, concrete, but also all of the finishes. Um, Sometimes this works quite well um, on a certain scale of project, but we find on smaller single family home residential, there's savings to be had to make a lot of our finish and fixture elements. And what I mean by that is anything from the drywall in, your sort of your flooring, anything affixed to the wall, light fixtures, plumbing fixtures, cabinetry. This is what makes up our finish and fixture package. That could be owner supplied. So that you escape, in this example, say $100 faucet, that would be marked up with the contractor's 20% markup, and now is $120 object, where we try to negotiate with our clients and with our contractor partners that these finishes and fixtures become owner supplied, and this $100 object could be purchased directly by the owner. But then you have these shipping and receiving issues that you're going to pay $100 or sort of retail, plus tax, and then plus kind of the headache of how to organize, store, assess whether things are broken or damaged in shipping, and then get them to the site, which is it can be a pretty significant headache. Or you can kind of go through owner supplied, but Huts is procuring all of these objects, that these many elements that make up the total finish and fixture schedule. We would purchase them and pass through our trade discount. It's often between 15 up to 30% on these objects. And then we would take a percentage for receiving and coordinating the site, making sure everything's in the right spot at the right time. Anything that is damaged or broken gets returned and replaced promptly. And so it ends up being that $100 object ends up being sort of $95 off of retail, and minus the kind of headache of getting it to site. But the objects aren't $100. It's usually can be 20 to 30, if not more, of the total project budget, this fixture and finish set of selections. So let's say on a $500,000 house, that's $100,000 budget. And so you can run the math. So rather than something being, or finish and fixture selections being $120,000 or 100 plus the headache, or in our case, procuring them through our interiors process, they're $95,000, which at scale starts to really add up and make a meaningful difference in the overall construction budget. And so we kind of map all of this out. How do we go from step one, interior lookbook and determining mood and figuring out which category and which sort of space and aesthetic disposition to sort of place our clients, and then go room to room with how does that play out across each bathroom, across each bedroom, across kitchens, and how does that mood sort of translate it into real selections. Um, and then once we have that inventory, we go through all the selections and say, what price point within this mood and within these objects should we choose? What should our overall finish and fixture selection be relative to the overall cost of the project? And also thinking about things like, is this going to have lots of renters coming through? That dictates some of the selections we would make and the durability of those objects. And then we'll sort of go through ordering and then manage the process of delivery in coordination with the contractor on our client's behalf. And so that takes us all the way through, and it's sort of a quick snapshot of what our sequence looks like to go from essentially this white box view that we'll have very early in our design and development process with our clients and go all the way through to a kind of fully understood space where it's no longer a white box, but instead a fully realized vision for what the project will look like. Let me stop here and open it up to questions. So someone wrote here, I was wondering if the service area is nationwide or only in the New York area. No, Huts is working on projects across the country at the moment. We've got projects all the way from down East Maine all the way to coastal California and many locations in between. We do have some of our deepest relationships and more focused efforts in the upstate New York area, but are kind of constantly growing and expanding our reach. And right now, bringing on more projects in the Carolinas and along the Blue Ridge, and but also fielding projects from all over the country. Sharon writes, "Can the client choose one's own fixtures or hardware or appliances?" Absolutely. Our design and development scopes are really set up, and cover this in a future webinar where we can just look at what a HUT's contract is. But they tend to read like a dim sum menu, that there are components that we sort of have to do to be able to get to the right level of documentation and onboard build teams and help execute your project. But there's other areas that our clients are absolutely able to jump in on and source all of their own materials and manage all of that process, both for cost savings or because you have a different perspective on what the execution of the interior of your property might be. Someone writes, "How does your pricing work for doing a project with Huts?" This is sort of a larger question. I'll maybe push to another time, but I will say that we work hourly within a range of services that are kind of required for that project. And it tends to be that our total fees, it really depends on the scale of the project, but somewhere between sort of $20,000 on the low end and upwards of sort of $50,000 on the high end and above if it's more complex or we're working on sort of multiple structures or it's more of a larger master planning project. But please do feel free to write me directly after this and we can talk specifically around your project. Can clients choose selections from both light and airy and dark and rich? Of course. So um, it's often, particularly with homes with multiple bathrooms, that one wants to be a little bit more cave-like and a little warmer, and one is sort of reflecting the mood of the view outside, and it gets airier and lighter. And so we're certainly able to mix and match those elements and sort of draw in from both sides of our catalog and make a home that's sort of multi-textured and has all of those layers within them. Jen wrote, "So you have sample houses that someone can visit." So our homes are really private homes at the moment, and so we've been solving this problem by building our own show home. We're basically taking on our own property we're building one of our ADU models and kind of inserting both the exterior and finish and interior finish schedule so that we have a place where becomes sort of a physical showroom of how we think not only about home design and where you can kind of walk in and experience one of our spaces, but also property development, because this is a place that is very sustainably developed. We sort of nestled our property, our ADU, sort of kind of perched in the woods, and our whole notion of sort of building light on the land is all on display on this property. So stay tuned for that, and we'll be able to, Jen, have you over to our place to see all of this in person. Chris, so do you all work on interior renovations of existing homes? Is it more meaningful for you all to work on new builds? This would be in the Catskills area of New York near Livingston Manor. So really good question. A lot of this was designed to sort of move us through the new construction process, and that's a lot of our work. Interiors is interesting because it can apply for this method, and our approach and a lot of our selections work really well for value add on renovations. And so we are looking more and more on how to bring some of the HUT's process and our fixtures and finishes methods into all the people who have existing inventory out there, existing homes that they're looking to refresh. And so, Chris, absolutely reach out and send me a note. Let's talk about your project near Livingston Manor. Where do you store products before sending them to our property for installation? So we have a shipping and receiving facility in Pennsylvania. Um, it's specifically designed for this purpose, for receiving interior purchases from all over the country and then distributing them at the right time, based on our sort of guidance, on wherever the build is, in wherever that might be. And so they'll take in from everywhere nationally and then distribute to everywhere nationally. Some of these are sort of broader questions about huts generally, and certainly something that I'll address in future webinars, around our contracting and the construction of our units. But I will answer this one. Elena says, a little off topic, are you planning on making ADUs prefab structures that can be dropped off at the prepared site with foundation? That's absolutely on the horizon. And whether you call it prefab or modular, in the places where we're able to access the site, that is definitely a solution we're looking into. So I will field these last two questions, and then I'll close it up. Rahul asks, "Is there a clean and easy digital platform to view all of the steps in the interior design process and get status updates on shipping, etc.?" Yeah, so we manage all of our projects through, each client of ours has a dedicated dashboard that we build in, Airtable, and it demonstrates a number of things. The sequence of our projects, every one of those steps that I showed you in that Gantt chart, and then within each of those steps, individual progress on whether it's design work and we're showing sort of the updates that we've made, whether it's interiors and we're showing what's been ordered or what's been received, or whether it's once we get into, owner's representation during construction and giving feedback on what's actually happening on site. So there's always sort of a destination for all of our clients to see exactly what's going on and to be as incredibly transparent on, what the steps are. Along Also in that dashboard, we lay out exactly what our billing looks like. So any of our clients at any time know exactly what we've been working on, what they've been billed for it, and what their progress is relative to our estimates for that phase of work. And then I noticed that Jeffrey Geronimo says, I noticed that most interiors are your standard rooms. Do you ever do finished basements? Yeah, absolutely. So we have, there's basically four foundation conditions that we can have. We can have, full basements, we can have crawl spaces, we can have, slab on grade, and we can have piers, and sometimes a mix of them. And when there's, full basements, often those are built not just for storage, but also to be additional square footage, and those can be, finished rooms in any number of ways. Rahul, thank you. He says, I use Airtable often. We also love it. And he says, transparent billing is key. I love it. And we couldn't agree more. So, everyone, thank you so much for joining. This is a blast to go over. Like I said, we're going to make our webinars sort of a weekly occurrence, each with a specific topic. They'll be, presented online. Everyone who attended here and anyone who wasn't able to make it, will let you know where to find, this video down the line. And again, we're here to answer questions and looking forward to working with you.